Let's talk about the book of Genesis. We often think of it as this collection of iconic stories, the creation, the flood, Abraham and his kids. But what if it's not a collection at all? What if it's actually one single, continuous story? Today, we're diving into a commentary that makes exactly that case, that Genesis is the carefully laid groundwork for one unfolding divine plan. So where does this commentary even start? Well, it all hinges on this one really foundational idea from Genesis. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. Now, this isn't just some happy little throwaway line. According to the source, this is the baseline. It establishes a world that was created perfectly, with a clear purpose and order. And that idea, it's the essential starting point for absolutely everything that follows. All right, so how are we going to trace this argument? We're going to follow the commentary's logic step by step through 6 key phases. We'll kick things off with that perfect beginning, then see how it all got broken with the fall and a promise. From there, we'll track a series of covenants, first with all humanity, then narrowing in on one very flawed but chosen family, all leading up to what the commentary calls the unfolding divine plan. Okay, let's jump right in. Section 1, a perfect beginning. The commentary really hammers this point home. To get the rest of the book, you have to understand its take on why humanity was created in the first place. So, according to this analysis, God's main goal for humanity wasn't just about having someone to hang out with. It was about delegation. Being made in the divine image was about being blessed with the job of ruling over creation, sort of like managers acting on God's behalf to extend his perfect order throughout the world. Well, as you probably know, that perfect beginning, it doesn't last. And that brings us to Section 2, the fall and a promise. This is where the commentary digs into the central conflict that really kicks off the rest of the narrative, and, crucially, the very first hint of a rescue plan. And the fallout? According to the commentary, it was instant and honestly catastrophic. That perfect open relationship with God shattered. It was replaced by fear and hiding. People started blaming each other instead of taking responsibility, and suddenly the world had pain, hard labor, and death. That perfect harmony was just gone. But here's where things get really interesting. The commentary argues that right in the middle of all this bad news, there's this glimmer of hope. It points directly to this verse, Genesis 3:15, as the very first whisper of a long-term rescue plan. The interpretation here is that this is a promise that a future offspring of the woman will one day arrive and finally crush the serpent's head for good. So we have this tiny seed of a promise, right? Well, now it starts to grow into something a bit more official. In Section 3, as sin begins to spread like wildfire, the commentary argues that God puts a new structure in place to carry his plan forward, a covenant with humanity. Okay, before we go any further, we need to get a handle on this key word, covenant. According to the source we're looking at, a covenant isn't just any old agreement. It's defined as a divine declaration that formally establishes a relationship, and that relationship comes with responsibilities. It's a key tool God uses throughout the rest of the story. Now, the commentary paints this really stark picture of 2 paths humanity could take. You've got the line of Cain, which is marked by just escalating sin and violence, culminating in Lamech, a figure of pure brutality. And then you have the line of Seth, which it says tried to preserve the knowledge of God, culminating in Enoch, a man who walked with God. It's this growing, overwhelming corruption from Cain's line that sets the stage for the next massive event. And that massive event is, you guessed it, the flood. To give you a sense of the sheer scale of this intervention, the commentary points out a pretty incredible detail. Noah's Ark was 450 feet long. To put that in perspective for you, that is 1.5 times the length of an American football field. This was a colossal undertaking. So, the world is essentially reset. And what happens next is a huge deal in this commentary's view. We get the Noahic covenant. This is presented as an unconditional promise, not just to one family, but to all of humanity and every living thing. It's a guarantee to never again wipe out the world with a flood, with the rainbow as its permanent sign. All right, that brings us to our 4th section, a covenant with a family. And this is where the commentary says the camera, so to speak, starts to zoom in. The universal promise made to all of humanity now gets focused through one single specific family line. So how does this promise actually get handed down? Well, the commentary lays it out like a family tree of a promise. It all starts with Abraham. The plan, as it's framed here, is to restore that original blessing from creation to everyone through his descendants. Then, that promise gets passed specifically to his son, Isaac. And from Isaac, it's reaffirmed with his son, Jacob, cementing this one particular lineage as the vehicle for the promise.
And this is where, for me at least, the commentary's analysis gets really interesting. Section 5, a flawed, chosen lineage. Because here's the thing. The people chosen to carry this perfect divine promise, they were anything but perfect. They were deeply flawed, complicated human beings.
And the commentary really puts Jacob under the microscope here. Check out this early vow he makes. You hear that? If God is with me, if I get back home safely, then the Lord will be my God. It's totally conditional. The source is basically saying this guy starts out as a wheeler-dealer, a bargainer trying to make a deal with God. But then, everything changes. The commentary points to this incredible moment where Jacob literally wrestles with a divine being all night. He walks away with a limp, but he also gets a new name, Israel, which means God's warrior, or he struggles with God. This isn't just a name change, it's a whole new identity, a fundamental shift in who he is and how he relates to God. And if you think Jacob's story is wild, it all culminates in the story of his favorite son, Joseph. The commentary holds this up as the ultimate example of divine providence. I mean, think about it. His own brothers, out of pure jealousy, sell him into slavery, a terrible, evil act. But that very act is what God uses to place Joseph in a position of power in Egypt, where he ends up saving the very family that betrayed him and the entire covenant line from starvation. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. We've gone from a perfect creation, through the fall, the flood, and this whole saga of a very flawed family. Which brings us to the grand finale in our last section, the unfolding divine plan. What does it all add up to?
So what's the big takeaway here? According to this commentary, Genesis isn't just a random series of cool stories. No, it frames the entire book as one single continuous narrative. It's the story of a blessing that was lost way back in the beginning and the long, messy, complicated process of God working to restore that blessing through one specific family. The whole book is designed to set the stage for what comes next, the nation of Israel.
And that leaves us with a really big question to chew on, coming from the commentary's point of view. If you look at Genesis this way, not as separate stories, but as the foundational chapter of one single overarching divine plan, how does that change the meaning of all those individual stories you thought you knew? It's definitely a compelling way to look at these ancient texts.